Hi, this is Deanna Wheeler, 2009 Polar Trek teacher, and I'm here on the Healy with Dr. Chad J., and he is one of the researchers, a research ecologist, that does research on walruses, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what he does and show us some of the equipment he uses.
As Deanna said, my name is Chad J. I'm with the USGS Alaska Science Center, and I'm a walrus researcher. And what we're doing right now here is radio tagging walruses. And so we're using a crossbow to attach the transmitters to walruses. And they're fairly high-powered crossbows because the transmitter is kind of heavy. So what we do first is, with the crossbow, I'm going to load one up. The crossbow is strung. We have to pull the string up and cock the crossbow, and it's cocked right now. Safety's on. We have a sighting system on this crossbow that actually is kind of a hologram. It's one that's used for military purposes, and it makes it easy for us to line up our shot on the walruses. So what we do is we have an arrow. They call them bolts when they're used with crossbow. The bolt fits on the back end of the transmitter in a hole, and it's a loose fit. The idea is that when the transmitter hits the walrus, the arrow just falls out the back of the transmitter, leaves the transmitter in place on the animal. The transmitter has an antenna that's used to transmit signals to overflying satellites, so that's how we collect our data. And on the other end of the transmitter is a kind of a barbed head that embeds in the blubber of the walrus. And walruses are very big. They have skin that's about 1.5 inches thick, blubber that's about another 1.5 inches thick, and so these things really don't bother them too much. It's probably similar to having a sliver in your thumb. And eventually, like a sliver in your thumb, these will work out of the animal after a couple months. So I'm going to put this arrow on the back of the transmitter, and the arrow is loaded and just lays there in the crossbow. And when we're ready to fire, we sneak up onto the animal. We have to get within about 10 yards of the walrus, and we want to put the transmitter on the walrus's back, just behind the shoulders, midline. When we're ready to shoot, we take the safety off, we aim, and fire, and it's that simple. The transmitter is delivered to the walrus, sticks in, the arrow falls out, and we're finished. The other thing that we're doing is, at the same time that we're attaching the transmitter to the walrus, we're using a second crossbow that I have here. And with this crossbow, we have on the end of the arrow a small stainless steel cylinder that's about 1/4 inch in diameter. And on the inside of the cylinder are some backward projecting tines. And the idea is that we fire this at the animal, it hits the walrus, and this cylinder punches through the skin. We have the arrow tethered onto the crossbow with a light line, and after it hits the animal, it falls out. When it comes out, it holds on to just a little plug of tissue. And then we use the line to pull the arrow back in, because sometimes they take it into the water, or it could fly into the water or something, so we're able to recover it with the retrieval line. And then when we're finished with that, the little stainless steel cylinder unscrews off of the head of the arrow, and when we get back to the lab, or in this case to the ship, we use tweezers and take the tissue out of this little plug of tissue out of this stainless steel cylinder, and then we put it in a preservative that we use, and we bring it back to the lab, and we use that tissue primarily for DNA analysis, and from the DNA analysis we can determine the sex of the animal, because every once in a while it's hard for us to see the sex of the animal. Everything happens pretty quickly, and we sometimes don't get a very good look at the animal after we've tagged it with the radio tag. And then also we can use that tissue in a population genetics study that we're doing as well, to see if there are any evidence of separate populations within the Pacific walrus. So these two crossbows are used in all of our tagging work. Two different people. The first person fires the radio tag, and right after that the second person fires the crossbow with the biopsy dart and collects a piece of tissue.